Hi, this is our Accessibility for Parks Grant Opportunity Guide to prepare your AFP application. This is our third video in a series as we look at the AFP scoring system and also talk about the documents to submit and definitions. So AFP again is through the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, and the scoring system is a little bit different. But keep in mind that this is one of several tools that the Park Authority uses to select grant recipients. The part of staff, RRS, and the staff reviews all applications to determine the final scores. And these teams review based on the administrative rules as described in the scoring system and the documents that you submit at the time of the application deadline. And everything, when we look at our definitions and requirements, keep in mind that these are best practices based in Parks and Recreation planning, public involvement, and development. So all those were considered in the design of the application and what we request and what's required in each of these documents. Different scoring system sections. First, we'll look at the level of planning for the proposed project, level of public involvement and support for the proposed project, what the requested funds are going towards, so building facilities, new, renovating, trails, linear connections, support facilities, all of those are examined. And then suitability of the site for the proposed project. And then finally, the applicant's commitment to maintaining the project. So is it maintained by volunteers, public works, or do you have a full-time Parks and Recreation department that maintains it? So the documentation, there's several things. So as you look at the form, it's a fillable form. So please go through, refer to the requirements. It'll let you know, for in this example, master plan, refer to these pages for the required components. Must have all the components listed in the definition for it to gain points. Answer the questions and note that there's always documentation required that you must submit. So we'll talk about each of those. Public involvement, again, look at that. What's required of public meetings? Is a meeting exclusively for discussing the AFP project, the grant project? We're looking at those key words on there. Did you widely advertise? So does everybody hear about it, have the opportunity to come? How did you get the word out about these meetings? If it's just a postcard or just at your community center, then that's a smaller audience. That's just people that use your community center. We want it to be broad. So was it widely advertised? Did you submit the minutes? We actually want minutes from the meeting that shows that the project was discussed. Who was present and what were the public comments? Were they in support of it? So these are all things that are required. Also with the recreational needs survey, we'll talk about that again in a moment, but survey of the applicant's jurisdiction. We want to show that citizens support the project, what they had asked for. This project conforms with the things that they asked for. And again, the survey documentation, all items listed must be included or you will not get credit for that survey. So when we look at recreation facilities, these are what you're planning to build with the project. So you might have recreation facilities, you might have support. Those are all in your project budget that we reviewed earlier. But what we're asking specifically about is recreation facilities. So facilities that provided, again, to meet the needs of children with physical and developmental disabilities, or veterans with physical and developmental disabilities. So the goal is one or both of these target groups, and does it enable them to participate in recreational and sporting activities regardless of their abilities? So that's that goal, that universal design. So again, this project, we want you to check how many. We want you to list the specific facilities. These should match up with your cost estimates and your site plan. And then more importantly, we want you to explain how each facility will meet the needs up here that are described. So this is your chance, again, to let us know as we score and evaluate what you're proposing to do. Next on recreation facilities is identify the features of these facilities that offer accessible features that go beyond the minimum. So we want you to incorporate universal design and then explain how each of these facilities will incorporate universal design. Other things are eligible. This is the part of the scoring system that, that makes your application more competitive, because that's what the money is intended to fund. So let's look at the AFP definitions, very similar to the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. If you look in the back of the application, it talks about what is a recreation facility versus a support facility. So recreation facilities can be outdoors, sports, courts, fields, pickleball, camping, swimming, fishing, fishing areas, accessible piers, court games, bocce, cornhole, volleyball. These are all court games. Indoor facilities. So keep in mind, if you have a building, say you're doing a recreation center, you have one building, but it might include multiple facilities. So within that building, you might have a gymnasium, an indoor track, a fitness room where you offer fitness classes. So those would be 3 different facilities in that one building. And you would need to include a floor plan with that. And then other things that are eligible, that don't necessarily score points, but they are eligible costs, are your support facilities. So parking lots, roads, lighting, bleachers, walkways. These accessible routes and walkways are all eligible expenses. Maintenance buildings, those support structures are eligible. So again, look at the list that's in the definitions. Also keep in mind that renovating is extensive reconstruction, so this might be that adaptation. So you're adapting current facilities to improve its usefulness, again, to meet the needs of children and veterans with disabilities. So if you're renovating these non-recreation facilities, this really turns it into a whole new use. That is like a new facility. And we can discuss that with you if you talk with your RRS consultant. Planning documents. I always say if you don't make a plan, you do plan to fail. So the more money into planning, the less money into construction and overall maintenance. So let's look at your site-specific park master plan, a system-wide plan. Some, depending on the project, you might actually have a greenway system plan. And some local governments have capital improvement plans. So we're looking at a plan for a specific park. Again, here's the definition that's included. It must adequately address all of the following items. So if you're missing one of these, that master plan would not get points. So make sure if you're developing a new plan, that if you're hiring somebody to do that they have these definitions and provide all this information. Because again, these are best practices that every master plan must include to be thorough. When you're submitting it, you'll submit a copy of it. The project must conform with the plan. So hopefully what you're proposing to do is in this plan. It must be created or revised in the past 5 years. You get a little bit fewer points if it's 6 to 10 years old. Over 10 years old does not get points. The local governing board has adopted a plan that's optional. Can have an extra point for that. If you're submitting those, again, a digital copy. Local governing board's meeting minutes if you're showing proof that it's adopted. And please list or highlight the page number where the proposed project is included. The system-wide plan, some also called a comp plan or comprehensive plan, is usually, so that's broader. That's not your specific site, but the entire system for your community. So how the local government's addressing to meet the recreation needs of citizens in a jurisdiction. These are all the items that you must include. One item that's frequently missed, it's not just a list of all the park facilities in your system is required, but what is available to your jurisdiction. So are there local state parks, school facilities, YMCA, other places that provide or that meet the recreational needs of your community? So make sure you list those. That should be in your document, in your plan. A detailed description of how you involved a broad range and representative number of citizens in the plan as it was prepared. So hopefully your plan included the public involvement. There's different ways that can happen, so in multiple methods. So make sure you address that. And then you can multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plans, like if there's a countywide plan and you're a municipality within that county. Some of those count if it satisfies all the above criteria. And again, RRS, we're happy to review any of those for you. So as you're submitting one of those, again, we want to make sure that the project conforms with the plan, it's been produced or, substantially revised within the past 10 years. Optional for the local governing board to adopt it. Many minutes, and please list and highlight the page numbers, especially in the comp plan. Sometimes those are a little more challenging to find. Because if you're depending on us to look through and find it and you didn't mark it, there's a chance we may miss it. So please let us know where it's included. If you're doing a greenway project, you might not have a comprehensive plan for that or a site-specific plan, but instead you might have a master plan for the greenway system. So again, it needs to include all of this information to be counted. So that's an option as well. A lot of transportation plans that a local government might have may not meet all of this. So make sure you're looking at this as the plan for the greenway system. I mean, it could be a subset and a bigger plan, but a lot of just basic transportation plans miss a lot of these details because they're looking more broadly. Capital improvement plans, not every local government has one of these, but it's a plan that lists all capital expenditures that a local government has approved for funding and scheduled in the near future. So we're looking at that. Is it scheduled? Is it included? It's typically a component of the regular budget cycle. And sometimes you might want to submit that entire improvement plan so we can review it and really understand that, yes, this is part of the local government system, and let us know where it is located. It's also advised that you provide minutes of its adoption. Highlight where it is. So, is this including here's all the recreation projects here? Here's the actual downtown park that might be applied for. Surveys and public involvement. What we look for when we're reviewing application documents is that the proposed project is presented by the applicant. The public has an opportunity to comment, and that they do comment and they support it. The applicant has used a means to widely advertise, opportunities to provide input, surveys and public meetings, document the methods, the attendance, and response. These would be your meeting minutes. Some folks submit sign-in sheets. A sign-in sheet shows who was there, but it doesn't necessarily document that there was support. So those public minutes go with that. Also described is the population that's in these meetings or in surveys representative of the jurisdiction and had the opportunity to provide input. So does the public support what's proposed? And is support received in time to contribute to the proposed project and plan? If this is a public input meeting about the park 2 weeks before you submit the application, that input probably did not go into the design of the plan, so would not get points. So make sure this is done ahead of time, because we want you to have the public involved in letting you know what they want and that you're providing that response. So again, public meetings, was it exclusively for discussing the AFP grant, obtain comments, and that can be in the past 2 years. Maybe you've been talking about this project for a while. The public supported the project that's proposed in the application, and you want to use, again, the description of widely advertised, meeting minutes, discussion of the proposed project, who was present, and the public comments. Recreational needs survey, the definition of that is in the back of the application. So make sure you read what this includes. This is very detailed, and the following elements must be documented. If one of these, again, if this is missing, you would not get points for that recreational needs survey. If you're contracting with somebody, if you're paying a company to do a random sample survey for you, make sure that they provide all this information to you. Again, the survey should be distributed to a random sample that's varied enough to be representative of the population. The number of respondents is large enough to adequately represent the population. We're looking at the 10% range. Questions must be clear and unbiased. You should not limit citizens from a narrow list of recreation opportunities. Everybody has the same questionnaire. I mean, you may have a questionnaire, one's in English, one's in Spanish, but it's the same questions. And the survey should include at least 3 of the following demographics to ensure representation. So you need to have at least 3. You can have more, but that's part of the survey. So it needs to be conducted in the past 10 years, demonstrates the proposed project meets the needs expressed by the public. You have to submit a copy of the questionnaire, the actual survey, the results of the survey, description of how it was distributed, how did people know about it, how did they complete it, the dates distributed, and the number of surveys. This item right here is missed by a lot of people. Applicants don't provide that, and we cannot, if you don't have the numbers of surveys distributed, we do not know the response rate. So talk with your RRS consultant if you have questions about preparing surveys and getting that information out. We'll be glad to help you facilitate how to do that, what are methods. So the number of respondents, as we look at this example here, say you mailed 8,000 surveys were mailed out. To get the response rate, there were 1,448 returned, 51 online responses, 605 non-deliverable addresses. So if you take the 605 out of the out of the deliverable addresses, that's going to give you the total. Instead of 8,000, 7,395 to get your response rate. So again, RRS is glad to talk with you about this. If you do, a lot of people hire companies, but make sure they tell you exactly the number of surveys distributed. It needs to be information that's included so we can check the validity of the survey. This is for your benefit as well. Civic group support, again, look at the application for that as far as what type of civic groups. The applicant needs to present the project to 2 or more local civic groups and get support. It can be an agenda, correspondence, or documentation that shows, hey, this is the meeting date. Thank you for the presentation. We voted or we support this project. Some folks will submit, like a group submitting letters of support, but that doesn't show that you've actually gone and presented this grant project to the civic group. So make sure they say, thank you for coming, presenting. After you present, you can have them provide these letters or minutes or some other documentation that shows the presentation and support. Advisory board, park and recreation advisory boards, or as well, if you have one in your jurisdiction, or a similarly appointed, non-elected group, get a motion of support for the proposed project and submit the meeting minutes for that. And that's our final video, video 3 on the grant scoring system overview and definitions for the AFP grant. Again, for assistance, go to go.ncsu.edu/RRS, and your RRS consultant will be glad to work with you as you develop your application. Thank you.